Right now, wherever you're sitting, I want you to do something with me. Reach over and run 2 fingers across your elbow. Just feel it for a second. Now do the same thing on your knee. Notice anything? For most people watching this, that skin feels rougher, thicker, maybe even a little scaly compared to the skin on your arm or your thigh just a few inches away. And here's the question almost nobody stops to ask. Why? Why would 2 small patches of skin, sitting right next to perfectly smooth skin, behave so differently? It's not an injury, it's not necessarily a sign that something is wrong, but it is one of the most overlooked and least understood parts of everyday skin health. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why it happens, why it tends to get more noticeable as we get older, and what actually helps versus what's just marketing. My name is Dr. Elizabeth, and for the past 12 years, I've spent my career helping people understand their skin, not through fear, and not through miracle promises, but through real, evidence-based education. This video isn't here to alarm you. Think of it more as a love letter to everyone who has quietly stared at their elbows in the mirror, wondered if something was wrong, and never found a straight answer. If you're one of those people, you are in exactly the right place today. Before we go further, I want to build a little community around this channel because the comment section is genuinely where I learn what to cover next. So tell me 2 things down below. First, where are you watching this from? I love seeing how many different countries and cities show up in these comments. And second, tell me whether it's your elbows, your knees, or both that give you the most trouble. I read every single comment and it shapes what I make next. And if you find this kind of grounded, honest skin education useful, a quick like on this video genuinely helps it reach more people who are asking the exact same questions you are. Now let's actually understand what's happening under the surface, because once you see the biology, the rough patches on your elbows and knees stop being a mystery and start making complete sense. Think of your skin as a factory that never stops running. It has 3 main levels and each one has a completely different job. The top level is called the epidermis. This is the layer you can actually see and touch right now. It's remarkably thin. In most places on your body, it's thinner than a sheet of paper, and its main job is protection. The epidermis is constantly producing new cells at its base, and those cells slowly travel upward over roughly a month, hardening as they go until they reach the surface as flattened, tough cells filled with a protein called keratin. Eventually, those cells shed off and new ones take their place. This process is called cell turnover, and it's happening on your entire body right now, all day, every day, whether you notice it or not. Beneath the epidermis sits the dermis. This is the thicker, more structural layer, and it's where the real infrastructure of your skin lives. Collagen and elastin fibers, which give skin its firmness and its ability to stretch and bounce back, are manufactured here. Blood vessels that nourish the skin, nerve endings that let you feel pressure and temperature, and the roots of hair follicles all sit in this layer. And below that is the hypodermis, sometimes called the subcutaneous layer. This is mostly made up of fat and connective tissue, and its job is insulation and cushioning. It's the layer that helps protect the deeper structures of your body, like the bone right underneath your elbow or the joint right underneath your kneecap. Now here's where it gets interesting, and here's the piece that explains everything about elbow and knee skin. The thickness and behavior of these 3 layers is not the same across your entire body. Research on skin anatomy shows that skin thickness can vary by a factor of nearly 10, depending on where you're measuring. The skin on your eyelids might be under 0.5 millimeter thick. The skin on the sole of your foot can be several millimeters thick. Your elbows and knees sit much closer to the thick, tough end of that spectrum. And there's a very specific biological reason why. Sitting on top of that epidermis is something dermatologists call the skin barrier, and I want you to picture it like the outer wall of a brick house. The skin cells themselves are the bricks, tightly packed and overlapping. And in between those bricks is a kind of mortar, made up of natural fats and lipids that your skin produces. This mortar does 2 critical jobs at once. It keeps moisture locked inside your skin, and it keeps outside irritants, bacteria, and environmental stress locked out. When that barrier is healthy and well hydrated, skin looks smooth and feels soft. When that barrier becomes compromised, whether from dryness, friction, or simply the natural changes that come with age, the surface starts to look and feel rougher, sometimes flaky, sometimes almost like fine sandpaper. And that brings us directly to why your elbows and knees are the two places on your entire body where this barrier tends to struggle the most. Here's the piece almost nobody explains clearly. Elbows and knees are joints. Every single time you bend your arm or bend your leg, the skin directly over that joint has to stretch, fold, and then return to its resting shape. Multiply that by thousands of movements a day, every single day, for years. Your body has actually adapted to this mechanical stress over your lifetime by building thicker, tougher skin in exactly those spots. It's the same underlying principle that causes a callus to form on your hand if you do repetitive manual work. The skin thickens as a protective response to repeated friction and pressure. But there's a second factor that compounds this, and it's one that surprises most people. The skin over your elbows and knees has a much lower concentration of oil-producing glands called sebaceous glands, compared to areas like your face or your scalp. Sebaceous glands produce natural oils that help keep the skin barrier's mortar well supplied. Fewer glands in an area means that area has to work harder to stay adequately moisturized, and it loses moisture to the environment more easily than oilier areas of skin. So what you end up with is a genuinely unique combination. Thicker, tougher skin, built by years of mechanical stress, sitting in an area with naturally fewer oil glands to keep that thicker skin supple. That combination is exactly why elbows and knees are, for most people, the roughest patches of skin on the entire body, even in people who otherwise have very smooth, healthy skin everywhere else. I find it helpful to compare this to something most people already understand intuitively, the sole of a shoe versus the fabric of a shirt. The sole is built thick and tough because it constantly meets the ground, absorbing pressure and friction with every step. The fabric of a shirt sits gently against skin that barely moves and rarely faces direct pressure. Your body essentially applies the same logic to itself. Wherever movement, pressure, and repeated folding happen most, thicker, tougher tissue develops there over time. Elbows and knees, simply by being the hinge points of your arms and legs, are structurally destined to be a little rougher than the smooth, low-friction skin on your forearms or the front of your thighs. Once you see it through that lens, the roughness stops looking like a flaw and starts looking like exactly what it is, a completely logical adaptation. It's also worth understanding that this isn't unique to humans in some strange way. Nearly every land mammal shows thicker skin at major joints and points of repeated contact, precisely because the biological principle at work here, tissue adapting to repeated mechanical stress, is universal. Your elbows and knees are simply doing what skin across the animal kingdom has done for millions of years, protecting the structures underneath through targeted thickening. Now, I want to speak directly to anyone watching this who is over the age of 60, because this next part matters more for you than for almost anyone else watching. As we age, several things happen to skin that compound this elbow and knee roughness even further. First, cell turnover slows down. Remember that monthly cycle I described earlier, where new skin cells rise to the surface and old ones shed away? Research on skin aging shows that this turnover process can slow considerably as we get older, sometimes taking noticeably longer than it did in earlier decades of life. That means dead skin cells can sit on the surface a little longer before they shed, which contributes to a rougher, sometimes duller texture. And elbows and knees, already prone to buildup because of their toughness, tend to show this first and most visibly. Second, natural oil production tends to decline gradually with age. Since elbows and knees already have fewer oil glands than most of the body, this natural age-related decline hits these areas particularly hard. Many people in their 60s and beyond describe skin that used to only get dry in winter now, feeling rough and tight year-round, and elbows and knees are very often the first place that change becomes visible. Third, the dermis, that structural middle layer we talked about, gradually produces less collagen as we age. This can make the overlying skin feel less plump and more prone to visible texture. It's not a flaw, and it's not something to be alarmed about. It's simply a well-documented, entirely normal part of how skin changes over a lifetime. I want to be very clear about something here. None of this means your skin is unhealthy or that something has gone wrong. It means your skin is doing exactly what skin does as the decades go by. And once you understand that, you can work with it instead of feeling confused or frustrated by it. I think of a retired engineer I'll call Robert, who attended one of my community talks a couple of years ago. He was in his early 70s, sharp as anything. And he raised his hand partway through my presentation to say something that stuck with me. He said that for most of his life, his elbows had been a minor, occasional annoyance, mostly in the depths of winter. But sometime in his late 60s, without any real change in his routine, they had become rough and slightly flaky nearly year-round. Even in the middle of summer, he genuinely thought something had gone wrong with his body. Once we walked through exactly what we just covered, slower cell turnover, declining natural oil production, and a structural area that already had fewer oil glands to begin with, he told me it was the first time anyone had actually explained the why to him. He wasn't broken. His skin was simply reflecting 7 decades of ordinary healthy living, and once he understood that, the small daily habits we're about to cover felt far less like damage control and far more like simple maintenance. This is something I want every viewer over 60 watching this video to sit with for a moment. So much of the anxiety around aging skin doesn't come from the changes themselves. It comes from not understanding why those changes are happening. Once you understand the mechanism, roughness on the elbows and knees stops feeling like a mystery you're losing a battle against and starts feeling like something ordinary that simply needs a little consistent support. Now that you understand the biology, let's talk about what people actually get wrong when they try to deal with rough elbows and knees, because I see the same 4 mistakes over and over again, and correcting them makes a genuinely noticeable difference for most people. This is easily the most common mistake I come across. When people notice roughness, the instinct is almost always to reach for a rough exfoliating scrub, a pumice stone, or even a body brush, and to attack the area aggressively, thinking more friction will solve a friction-related problem. But remember what we just learned. Elbows and knees are already under constant mechanical stress from movement. Adding aggressive scrubbing on top of that can actually irritate the skin barrier further, disrupting that mortar between the bricks rather than repairing it. Many people experience a frustrating cycle here. They scrub, the skin feels smooth for a day, and then it comes back rougher than before because the barrier has been stressed rather than supported. I think about a woman I'll call Margaret, a retired school teacher in her late 60s who came to a public health workshop I ran a few years ago. She told me she had been using a stiff exfoliating brush on her knees every single day for months because she believed that consistency would eventually win. Instead, her knees had become increasingly irritated, slightly red around the edges, and rougher than when she started. Once she simply stopped the aggressive scrubbing and switched to a gentle, consistent moisturizing routine, which we'll talk about shortly, her skin texture noticeably improved within a few weeks. The lesson isn't that exfoliation is bad. Gentle exfoliation absolutely has a place. The lesson is that force is not the same thing as effectiveness. Not all moisturizers are created equal, and this is something that trips up even people who are otherwise very diligent about their skincare. Many lightweight lotions, the kind that absorb quickly and feel weightless, are genuinely wonderful for the face or for areas with more natural oil production. But on thick, tough, low-oil areas like elbows and knees, a light lotion often isn't enough. It sits on the surface briefly, gets absorbed almost immediately, and doesn't have the staying power to actually repair that lipid mortar we discussed. Dermatologists generally recommend looking for thicker, richer formulations for these specific areas, ones containing ingredients like shea butter, ceramides, or petrolatum-based occlusives. Ceramides are particularly interesting because they are actually a component of your skin's own natural barrier. Research suggests that applying products containing ceramides can help support and reinforce that barrier structure directly rather than just sitting temporarily on the surface. It's the difference between painting over a cracked wall and actually repairing the mortar between the bricks. This is a mistake almost everyone makes without realizing it. Most people treat moisturizing their elbows and knees as a reactive task. They only reach for a product once the roughness is already visible or uncomfortable. But by the time skin feels rough to the touch, the barrier has often already been under stress for days or even weeks. Many people experience this as a constant cycle of catching up rather than staying ahead. Results vary from person to person, but consistency tends to matter far more than intensity here. A modest amount of moisturizer applied daily, even on days when skin looks perfectly fine, tends to keep that barrier consistently supported rather than letting it dip low and then trying to recover it. This is especially relevant for anyone over 60, since we already discussed how oil production naturally declines with age. Waiting for visible roughness before responding means you're always working from behind. This mistake surprises a lot of people because it has nothing to do with what you put on your skin and everything to do with how you clean it. Hot water, especially long, hot showers or baths, is wonderful for relaxation, but it's genuinely tough on your skin barrier. Heat encourages the natural oils in your skin to break down and wash away more easily. Combine that with the fact that elbows and knees already have fewer oil glands to begin with, and you have a recipe for accelerated dryness. I want to gently mention something here for anyone who loves a long hot bath as part of a nightly wind-down routine, especially many of my viewers over 60 who tell me this is one of their favorite parts of the day. I am not telling you to give that up. What I am suggesting is a small adjustment, keeping water temperature warm rather than hot and applying a rich moisturizer within a few minutes of drying off, while skin is still slightly damp. This single adjustment is one of the most consistently effective habits I recommend, and it costs nothing extra. There's also a seasonal pattern worth mentioning here, because I hear about it constantly in the comments on this channel. Many people notice their elbows and knees becoming noticeably rougher the moment colder weather arrives, and this isn't a coincidence. Indoor heating systems dramatically reduce the humidity in the air around you, and low humidity air pulls moisture out of exposed skin far more efficiently than most people realize. Combine dry indoor air with hot showers taken to warm up on a cold day, and you have two barrier stressing factors working together at once. If you notice your elbows and knees consistently worsening in the fall and winter months, that's not your imagination. And it's a good signal to be slightly more diligent with the routine we're about to walk through, particularly during those colder months. Now let's turn all of this into something practical you can actually start today. I call this the damp skin rule, and it's built entirely around the biology we've already covered. Step 1, wash with warm, not hot water, and use a gentle, fragrance-free cleanser on the areas around your elbows and knees, rather than a harsh soap. Step 2, pat the skin dry rather than rubbing vigorously, leaving it slightly damp rather than completely dry. Step 3. Within about 3 minutes of stepping out of the shower or bath, apply a thick ceramide or shea butter-based moisturizer directly to your elbows and knees. That short window matters because damp skin absorbs and locks in moisturizing ingredients more effectively than skin that has already fully dried out. Step 4. Repeat this daily. Not just when you notice roughness. Think of it the same way you'd think of brushing your teeth, a maintenance habit rather than a treatment you reach for only in a crisis. Step 5, and this one is optional but genuinely helpful for many people. Once or twice a week, use a very gentle exfoliating approach, such as a soft washcloth with light pressure, never a stiff brush or harsh scrub, to help remove some of that built-up surface layer of cells before applying your moisturizer. Remember, gentle and consistent will always outperform aggressive and occasional. For anyone dealing with particularly stubborn roughness, especially many of my viewers in their 60s, 70s, and beyond, an additional small step can help. Applying a thin layer of moisturizer, then covering the elbow or knee area with a soft cotton sleeve or a loose bandage overnight a few times a week can give those ingredients extended time to absorb into that thicker, tougher skin while you sleep. It's a small habit, but many people find it makes a genuinely noticeable difference within a matter of weeks. I also want to mention clothing, because it's a factor almost nobody thinks about. Rough fabrics, particularly certain wools or stiff synthetic blends, can create additional friction against already sensitive elbow and knee skin throughout the day. If you notice irritation lining up with certain sweaters, jackets, or trousers, it may simply be the fabric adding mechanical stress on top of what your joints are already experiencing through normal movement. Choosing softer, smoother fabrics for the layers that sit directly against your elbows and knees is a small, easily overlooked adjustment that can meaningfully reduce ongoing irritation, especially during colder months when heavier fabrics come out of the closet. One more habit worth mentioning is hydration from within, though I want to be careful not to overstate what this can do. Drinking enough water throughout the day supports your overall skin health, but research suggests its effect on localized areas like elbows and knees is modest at best, compared to what a good topical moisturizing routine provides. Think of it as a helpful supporting habit rather than a solution on its own. Staying reasonably hydrated is good for your whole body, skin included, but it will not replace the targeted, topical care that thicker, lower oil areas like your elbows and knees genuinely need. I want to be honest with you about something important. Because elbows and knees are structurally different from the rest of your skin, thicker, with fewer oil glands, and under constant mechanical stress, they will likely never feel exactly as smooth as the skin on your forearm, no matter what routine you follow. That's not a failure of your skincare, that's simply the nature of joint skin, and it's true for nearly everyone, at every age. The goal of everything we've discussed today isn't to erase that natural difference entirely. It's to keep that skin as comfortable, as healthy, and as well supported as it can genuinely be. Before we close, I want to offer a gentle, honest note. Most rough patches on the elbows and knees are simply a normal result of the biology we discussed today: thickness, friction, and lower oil gland density. However, if you notice roughness that comes with persistent redness, itching that disrupts your sleep, cracking that bleeds, or patches that seem to be spreading well beyond the elbow or knee area itself, that combination is worth bringing up with a dermatologist. There are a handful of underlying skin conditions that can sometimes present in these areas, and a professional is the only person qualified to properly evaluate that possibility. This isn't meant to worry you. It's simply the responsible, honest thing to mention, because most of what we covered today applies to the vast majority of people, and a small number of situations genuinely do benefit from a professional set of eyes. So here's what I want you to walk away with today. The roughness on your elbows and knees isn't a mystery, and it isn't a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's the natural result of thicker, tougher skin built over a lifetime of movement, sitting in an area with fewer natural oil glands, and it becomes more noticeable as cell turnover and oil production naturally shift with age. Understanding that alone tends to bring a lot of people real relief, because so much of the frustration around this comes from simply not knowing why it's happening. Start with the damp skin rule this week. Warm water, gentle drying, a rich moisturizer within those first few minutes, and consistency over intensity. Small, steady habits, applied daily, tend to outperform dramatic occasional efforts every single time. If this video helped you understand your own skin a little better, that genuinely is the entire purpose of this channel, and I would love for you to consider subscribing so you don't miss the next one. Tell me in the comments which area you're going to focus on first, and as always, take good care of that remarkable, hard-working skin of yours. I'll see you in the next video.